Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with a former chemist turned chief transformation officer of Transform Sales, Wesleyne Whittaker. And Wesleyne broke down a lot of what it takes to increase your sales performance, starts looking inward and improving your self-awareness and looking at things inwardly and starting from our, role clarity. Like, what about our role do we like? Do we dislike? And when we can align to our purpose and really be in service, it allows us to project that and translate that to the engagement we have with our prospects. So if we know what lights us up and if we know what brings meaning to us, we can bring that out in our clients. And that's what really separates you from all the rest. And, we think about all the noise and AI out there, we need some differentiation. And just really knowing your purpose, knowing what lights you up, knowing what your superpower is part of it. She shared some tactical activities she does with her teams and the customers she works with. And one of them she shared, role playing, and a lot of people cringe when they hear the word role playing, but just practicing asking open-ended questions and celebrating, when you've asked a good open-ended question, but also bringing everyone's awareness to a not so good one. And a not so good one might be that it's 3 or 4 questions layered in. Maybe we're not holding space and pausing for the person to actually respond, and we're filling the silence. And also, when we add a multifaceted or layered question, it gives them the opportunity to choose which one to answer. So just really, again, back to that self-reflection and self-awareness, look at, what are we doing to prepare for our prospects so that when we show up, we're different. We're teaching them something about themselves. We're perhaps inviting them to rethink the way in which they're doing business. And it all stems back from, the practice, the preparation we can do before we get in front of them. Another area we talked about was language. Like, do you speak the language of your prospects? This is so important. Otherwise, it screams sales rep. It screams I'm on the outside looking in. And so learn some of the language and forget your own internal jargon and all your acronyms and really speak the language of the customer so that they feel, there's a relationship there, that you understand them, that you're able to help them. And we also talked a little bit about sales leadership and really ensuring that you are not painting everyone with the same brush, that you're really connecting with your team through coaching and giving them the support that they need, but also in terms of motivation, motivating them to something that is aligned and important to them, something that they've identified as a strength. So if not everyone is motivated by money, what is it? Or if it is money, is it that down payment on the house? Is it the new boat? Is it the vacation? But if you're going to dangle something in front of them, make sure it's relevant and it's meaningful so that it, in fact, will motivate them. So tune in, get a pen and paper, because I know she provides a lot of tactical steps that you can apply as an individual contributor, also as a sales leader. If you apply anything that she suggests, tag us in your post. Let us know what results you yielded, and hope you took out of it as much as I did. So thanks for watching, everybody. So I am delighted to have Wesleyne Whittaker join us on the podcast. Wesleyne, welcome.
Hello, Karen. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Thank you so much. I know you're going to bring some energy and a lot of wisdom because everything you post is so, when I see it coming, I read it and I pause. So it's definitely valuable. I want to start by asking you, what did you learn about yourself working in the lab as a chemist? Because that's not a typical transition. Was there something that you learned, or was there a moment where you're just like, I want to change? But then, you changed to entrepreneurship. Like, what was that journey and kind of what went off in your mind to make that shift?
Yeah, so as a chemist in the lab, one of the things that I realized very quickly was I was different from my colleagues. They really enjoyed being in the lab and doing their work and kind of living in a silo where I was like, why are we doing this? And I can even remember in college, I would always go out and I would do these summer internships at these different universities and sometimes at corporations. And I'm like, what is the point of this research? Like, how does this help humans? How is
Mhm,
this going to help society? And so, as a chemist, that was always my question: why am I doing this work? And so, because of that, I used to actually go to the salespeople when they got back from their sales calls, like they would be gone for, weeks at a time. And I'm like, so you guys just submitted this new sample. What's the reason I'm testing it? What was the failure in the field? And what is this costing the company, the person? And so that was the first time I had that shift of, I'm a little bit different than most of my colleagues.
mhm. I love that. Recognizing that you are different, because I think that self awareness is very important. But a lot of, well, what I heard there was curiosity. But a lot of what you did there and how you leaned inward is a lot of what we do in sales. And so it was almost organically brewing, whether you knew it or not, that curiosity, that questioning, that going to the source and really understanding. Because I think when you understand, you're able to teach. But when someone asks you to do something, you're not just this puppet saying, "Yeah, sure." It's like, well, what is it going to yield by me doing this? Even what's the cost and the risk? Like those are all very typical sales questions that it sound like you had organically before even entering the world of sales.
Absolutely. And so that curiosity that I had when I stepped into my first sales position and they sent me to Germany for 2 weeks, they said, "Hey, now go back home and sell." I was like, "I'm sorry, what? What do you want me to do? Like, you taught me all about these instruments. I know I'm a chemist, I understand this stuff, but I have no clue how to sell." And so because I already had so much great experience with asking the salespeople, talking to the people who were a lot smarter than me that had the PhDs. I was already used to doing that. That's what I did when I started in sales. I
Mhm,
literally went to my customers and I was like, how are you using your instruments? What are you doing? How is this helping you? What isn't working? And so I started asking them questions, right? And so that curiosity, I feel that it is so lost today in sales because you ask one question and as soon as the person responds, you're trying to pitch them a solution. We
mhm,
don't sit and we don't continue to ask and continue to learn because essentially I went to my existing customers, I learned how they were using their instrumentation, and then I went to their competitors and I used the same things I learned from their competitors to sell them, right?
mhm.
And so, because of that curiosity, because of those good questions that again are so lost on us today, that's how I was able to build my territory so quickly.
That's so good. So, how do you teach your clients now, Wesleyne, to be curious, to ask those questions, to really get to that current state? Like for some people who just want to hit the pitch button, how do you kind of slow them down in order to speed up?
So I do this thing where when we're in a training, I do lots of role playing. Nobody likes role playing, but it's so fun when we do it. So we have this whole group of the entire team, whether it's 20 or 30 or 40 people, and we do this tapping in, tapping out type of role playing. And I encourage them. I'm like, okay, we're gonna ask these open-ended questions. I've taught them all the different kinds of questions. And whenever somebody uses a complex question, which is
Mhm.
what I call a question that is multifaceted. You're asking me three questions at once. I immediately hit the buzzer and I say, nope,
Mm,
somebody else, tell me what did they do wrong? What did they miss? What was the misstep? And if they ask a really good question, I hit the buzzer again. What did they do right?
mm.
Right? And so it forces them to think. They have to actually listen to what is happening. And then when they practice this in smaller groups, they're like, I didn't realize how much I was asking at one time. I didn't realize how much I was talking and not allowing the actual prospect to talk. So when you build that self-awareness and you help people realize these are the things that I'm doing that are preventing me from getting to this next step. So let me figure out how I can do this a little bit better.
Mhm. So what I heard there's the why. Why am I not getting the next step? Because that's the frustration, right? But then you're giving them the how. And I love that you celebrate like you the buzzer with the wins and the losses.
Mhm.
You know, we're so quick to reprimand, but I think we also need to celebrate and recognize what good looks like.
Yes. Yes, because if we never recognize what good looks like, if we don't celebrate our small wins, the tiny things that we're doing, then we're always looking for the big purchase order to come. And depending on your sales cycle, it might take 6 or 12 months for that purchase order. But if you can't celebrate that one tiny win that you have every step of the journey, as a salesperson, it beats you down because we get so many no's, we get so much rejection, we get so much every single day when we're the face of the company, essentially, that if we don't celebrate the small things, then we will allow ourselves to be in this place of, oh yeah, I guess I did close another order, yeah, but what about all these other things that I didn't do well?
Mhm. Yeah, oh, so much came out of there. Even just gratitude, expressing gratitude, but I think, even allowing your brain to recognize the win and feel that dopamine hit, because like you said, like when you're trying to go a long period of time, like my sales cycle was 12 to 18 months. It was feast or famine. But like you definitely had to celebrate them, and I was guilty of that too, like on to the next one. But I think you can see how people get into a funk and get into like oh, I guess, and just start accepting mediocrity. And this is just the way it is. But it doesn't have to be, because even if it's not a total win, if you're advancing and you're like, I got the meeting, I got the demo, I got 6 people to come versus the last time was 3 people. Those are mini wins that are showing evidence that you're getting closer.
Absolutely. Every single step along your journey, along your sales process, you should celebrate, right? When you go into your CRM, which everybody, I hope they use their CRM to help
Hmm.
them win business. Every time you get to move a stage forward, that is a positive win. Every time you get to complete a
Hmm.
task and you get to put an outcome, and the outcome doesn't have to be a positive
Hmm.
outcome. Sometimes somebody will answer the phone and they'll be like, you know what, all projects have been put on hold for the next 3 months, but can you follow up with me at this point? So they said no, but they said not right
Hmm.
now. And even if you get that call and they say we decided to go with your competitor, that is an opportunity for you to learn, what can I do differently next time? Not better, but differently. So every time you speak to a client, they give you feedback, whether it's in your favor or against you, you are moving, you are developing your sales skills, you are helping yourself become better.
Hmm. And in your chemist days, you tested failure analysis. So it sounds like what you're doing here is you're also assessing failure analysis. And I feel as an entrepreneur that the moment or the quicker you accept that it's part of it, the quicker you can become successful.
Absolutely, 100%. We we are not going to win 100% of the things that we are going after. And I tell people, if your win rate is too high, you're not going after risky enough
Hmm.
business. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, I have a 70% win rate." Oh, you're not going after risky enough business. You're staying in your comfort zone, right? So you have to realize what they say is so true. High risk, high reward. And so failure is inevitable. You are going to reach times in your career where you are not going to hit your quota, where you are not going to hit the goals that you set for yourself, where you are going to get rejection after rejection after rejection. But your mental fortitude and your mental stamina, that's what keeps you
Hmm.
going. That's what keeps you pushing through and like, okay, this isn't the end of the road. I'm going to try something a little bit different. And that little bit different gave me one little win. I got somebody to schedule a meeting with me where I've been shooting, batting
Yeah.
100, and nobody's been saying yes, right? So you have to really, really hone in and celebrate those things. And I really take it a step further when I am working with someone and I know they're really struggling with seeing the positives or seeing the good. I make them keep what I call a win
Hmm.
journal. And so at the end of every day, they write down 3 wins. They can be personal, they can be professional. And what we see is when they start out, they're grappling at straws
Hmm.
to find wins. But within literally 20 to 30 days, you can see the wins are getting bigger and they're celebrating them themselves. They're getting excited. So, really taking time to celebrate each and everything that you're accomplishing is so important.
I love that. And what do you do, Wesley, to celebrate your either mini or big wins?
Oh, I am like the celebration queen. Everybody knows that I celebrate every single thing. And one, I reward myself. So if I set my goals for myself, and it might be something big like, okay, I'm going to go on this vacation that I've been waiting to go on. It might be something like I'm going to take a half day off and just go hang out with a friend or go get my nails done or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Like it's
Yep.
something that matters to me, and
Yep.
I'm like a outside of the box person. So I might say, hey, let me do a candle making class because that sounds really cool. So I
Yeah.
find ways to not just reward myself, but also I find ways to truly do that self care that we really, really don't do so often in sales.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that you do reward yourself because I think when it is meaningful and you're stepping away from the business, you're mindful as to why you're away, and I think that anchors in the feeling that I'm away because I'm celebrating my wins. And you know what I did, because 53% of the reason they buy is the person, right? So when you know that like that was me that did that, and this is my company, and that was my logo, like there's even a heightened celebrations. Like I don't have a big logo behind my name. I got my own company, that there's that like real sense of satisfaction.
Absolutely. It's realizing that the money, some people are motivated just by money, some people are
Mhm,
motivated by what the money does for them, and other people are motivated by how the money is going to help them help somebody else. And understanding how you are really motivated helps push
mhm,
you forward. So I'm intrinsically motivated, so I'm running this race by myself. So I can, it's for me as an entrepreneur, that's an easy great thing for me to do because I am my
mhm.
biggest competition. But some
Yep.
people need to run a race next to someone else. So if you're that person, then find an accountability partner on your sales team and say,
Mhm,
hey, I just want us to run a, for the next 30 days, let's run some kind of contest. And it can be simple. How many calls we're making, how many demos we're able to book. It's not the end result. It's not just about the money. It's about all the little inputs and all the small things that lead up to actually winning the sale.
mhm. Totally, and I think the lesson there, Wesley, is the self-awareness that you are, a lone wolf kind of, and you can do your own thing. I have an accountability group because I know myself, and I need sometimes that, I can go off into shiny penny syndrome and looking all over the place, and I have a group of strong women that we hold each other accountable, we lift each other up, and I just think it's whatever works for you, but know what that is.
Yes. Know if you need to have
Mhm,
your accountability crew. And don't get me twisted. I have a full crew of friends and people professionally that help keep me motivated and push me. But
mhm,
for me, in hitting my business goals and business objectives, I know that I am trying to break records that I've already made myself, right?
mhm.
And some people, that's not enough for them. Some people
Yeah.
need to say, my mom's been paying for this house for 25 years and she's about to retire. And I want to be able to pay off this house for her in the next 2 years so she doesn't have to worry about it. And that is their North Star. And that is what will motivate them to keep going. It's not about themselves. It's not about having somebody else around. It's about helping someone. So
Mhm,
understanding what your North Star is important. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, how do I know how I'm motivated? Right? You have to think
mhm,
about when you get excited about something. Are you getting
mhm,
excited because you have accomplished something, you have beat your own goal? Or are you excited because you're helping someone else? Or are you excited because you're in this team dynamic and everybody in the team is revved up? Like, so just take a moment and think about just a singular event. The last time you were celebrating something, how did you celebrate? And what got you most excited about that celebratory moment?
mhm. I think that's great, and even when you think about sales and the various roles, it's a spectrum, so even knowing what part lit you up, it might maybe you're not in the right part of sales, like, maybe you like the beginning part, like the BDR part, or maybe you like the excitement of doing it all as an AE, or maybe you like customer success at the end, so I think when you understand what lights you up, you can see that alignment or perhaps misalignment that maybe there's a better role suited to my passions, what does excite me.
Absolutely. And that to thine own self be true because I know
Mm,
my strengths. I know the things that I do not enjoy doing. I can do them, but I just
yeah.
don't enjoy doing them. And it's not a good use of my time. to do those things. And
Mhm.
so if you are in a role where I call it a full cycle salesperson, you have to hunt, you have to do the demo, you have to close it, and then you have to service it on the back end. And if you're feeling burnt out in that, again, like you said, which part of that excites me the most? And
Mhm.
maybe you're just an SDR and you're like, oh my goodness, every time I book that meeting, I get so excited. But, I'm not so sure. I just really enjoy just calling. I like to talk to people. And when I book the
Mhm.
meeting, it means I got to talk to someone. So that's the part of the process I enjoy the most. But it really requires you to get into the granularity of your job and not just I'm burnt out in sales. Which part of sales are you burnt out in? Which part
Mhm.
of your job are you not enjoying?
And for people listening and they're in that reflective excuse me period now going like I want to maybe I'm in the right knob but maybe not. What would you suggest they do to get granular, to look inward? Would they journal? Would they write emotions or feelings down to just start like observing first before they make any kind of haste decision?
Yes, I would. I'm a very big proponent of writing. And one thing that I would recommend them doing is actually keeping a log. So when I'm working with people who are kind of in this struggle moment, I make them keep a log of their time for two full business days, right? And what I make them do is like, well, how long did it take you to do this activity or that activity? And how did you feel after you completed
Mhm.
that activity? Did you feel like you were just jumping all day? Did you say, I really enjoyed doing this one thing? And man, the 90 minutes was up, so I had to move to the next thing. And that was kind of a bummer. And when you
Mhm.
figure out the things that are draining you, you have to realize the things that are draining you are typically not the best use of your superpowers. We all have superpowers. And so figuring out, is this a different role or am I doing something that's not actually my job?
Mhm.
Because you could be an AE, but the SDR that is assigned to you is not doing a good job of booking your meetings. So you're spending so much time booking meetings. And what I really encourage people to do is to not do those things in a silo, right? So speak to your manager and say, hey, so for the last 10 meetings that were booked, I had to book 7 of them. And what I'm finding is this is impacting me hitting my quota because I'm spending so much time on the front end. So really take a good look. Is it something that I'm doing that I shouldn't have to do? Or is it something that is required of me, but it's just not me using my superpowers?
Mhm. I love that. And again, that's just looking inward. And a lot of times the pace is so busy, people just accept it. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, I'm tired when you move on. But I always go back to when to slow down in order to speed up and just really take stock of what's happening. Is this me? Or is someone not serving me up to the level that I expect? And then the third part is, the importance of having that coaching or that one on one with your manager and really debriefing. You're also connecting along the way, but you're sharing feedback, and I think that's valuable. What are your thoughts on the importance of coaching in general?
Yeah, coaching is so important. And as leaders, we often are so stuck in this cycle of all the tactical things that we have to do with our jobs that we don't coach. We put coaching on the back burner, and it's one of the last things that we do. But it should actually be in the forefront of your mind and use everything as a coachable, teachable moment. Don't just
Hmm.
let something slide. If you are in a meeting with someone and you notice they say something that they maybe could have said in a different way, or you're sitting in a sales call with a salesperson and they missed a huge opportunity for that the prospect mentioned. Instead of butting in, you write note that down and use it as a coachable moment afterwards, right? And
Hmm.
so after you say, hey, let's do a debrief, and you walk them through. So those kinds of moments of coaching in the moment are important, but actually having scheduled time with your reps to just coach. This is not about the CRM. This is not about your quota. This is about these are the skills that I would like to see you improve upon. And I'm going to choose one, just one at a
Hmm.
time. And I'm going to take that skill and I'm going to work on it with you.
And even when you say that, like I feel supported just hearing you say that, knowing that it's just one, and I'm carving out space for you because I recognize that this is an opportunity, but I'm also in your corner. Like, I want you to get better.
Absolutely. Organizations where leaders put coaching first, their retention rates are through the roof. There was
Mhm.
this team that I worked with probably about 4 years ago, and I got a note from this leader recently, and he told me that he has retained 100% of his team in 4 years.
Mhm.
100%. And in a time where the economy was rocky, things weren't that good, but he's retained them because he truly understood what he needed to not just get good people, but to
Mhm.
keep good people. And
Mhm.
the keeping is the part that so many sales leaders kind of fall down on.
It's so true. It's all about the hiring, but then you got to retain them. And sometimes there's such a fear of, well, what if I allow them on LinkedIn and build a personal brand, and what if they leave? I'm like, well, what if you treat them well, and what if they stay?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like if you create that environment for them, people will throw money at them. When I was talking to one of my employees recently, and she was like, "Yeah, I've been getting a lot of inquiries and all this and all that," and I'm like, "Oh, that's great." I don't
Hmm.
feel threatened at all. It's just that because her presence has built up to a certain place, you're more
Hmm.
attracted to everyone,
Of
right?
course.
And so if you want to continue to train up your competitors' top salespeople, then you will continue to cultivate an environment where people can't grow, where they hit a glass ceiling and they're like, there's nowhere else for me to go. And so it is our job as leaders, as in our organization, to make sure that we understand what each and every person on our team needs to grow and thrive
Mhm.
and develop.
And I would say in my practice, that's the number one challenge is that I see leaders painting everyone with the same brush. And like when we started chatting, what motivates you is different from someone else. But yet when you're dangling the money card or, the vacation card to someone who actually wants to be part of something bigger in community, it doesn't motivate them. And then you're put on a pip or something because you're not performing. And it's like, hang on a minute, you haven't identified their true north. Therefore, you can't help them align to it.
Absolutely. This is not one size fits all world, right?
Hmm.
Just because maybe we have similar backgrounds or similar experiences, what is important for me is different than what's important for the next person sitting next to me. And if leaders don't take a moment and truly understand that, then they're missing a huge gap because when one person is low on their numbers, and you're like, oh man, don't you want to be at the top of the leaderboard? They're like, no, I really don't care about that. But
Okay.
instead of saying, do you want to be at the top of the leaderboard? You're like, man, don't you have that vacation planned in September with your family?
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
you said you wanted to do that excursion that costs this much money. This is going to help you get 50% closer to that goal. You're like, okay,
Mhm.
let me start dialing. Let me start reaching out to
Yeah,
some people, right? Because that hit me on an emotional level.
totally.
And so when we hit people on that emotional level, what we're doing is we're hitting them where they can feel it, where they're like,
Mhm.
yes, this is important for me. And not only that, this person, my leader, understands the things that are important for me and he's mentioning them. She's mentioning them. So I feel like I am a part of this team.
Mhm. And when you look at that, taking that a step further, that's the way buyers buy. So that rep is gonna model that same behavior which was given onto him to his customers or her customers because that emotional limbic part of the brain, no concept of language, is feeling. So when you can show that to your team, they are going to emulate that same emotion and evoke it with their customers.
Absolutely. I like to a lot of leaders, they are so much in sales mode that they don't really think about what they need to do to be a good leader. And I like to help them flip it and I tell them what you did, what got you to become this top salesperson that then moved
Mhm.
into leadership is the same thing that you need to do with your team. You
Mm.
listened a lot to your customers, you asked them a lot of questions, you didn't try to fix them. It's the same thing that you are doing with your team. And so what you're saying is true. When I'm receiving that kind of leadership and mentorship from my leader, I'm going to try those skills out on my customers because it made me feel good. And I think they want to feel good too. So we have to be the change that we want to see. And so what
Mhm.
that means is if you want your salespeople to ask better questions, if you want them to slow down their sales process and not rush so much, you have to do that internally too.
Mhm. Yeah, my hashtag is model the behavior.
That's so
Eh,
good. So good.
well, if you're not doing it, and you're asking them to do it, there's such an incongruence, right? And even instead of just saying, you can trust me, like, I'll show you you can trust me, or I'll show you, I'll demonstrate what asking a great open ended question is, and one at a time. Because back to your activity, I see it so often. They've layered 4 questions in there, and what happens is the customer will choose the one they wanna answer, and then the other 3 are gone, and you're like, "We needed 2 and 3 to know what's going on to move to the next one," right? But if no one's showing them, layer it in one. If you didn't get it, go back, recircle, reframe, whatever you need to do. But, your mediocrity becomes acceptable.
Absolutely. I love that. Mediocrity becomes the norm, right? We accept mediocrity because we are showing mediocrity. And so,
Mhm.
if that is all that we know to show, that's all that they're going to know to do. And it's really sad when you see there are so many individual contributors, salespeople out there. They're like, I want to get better, but I don't have a company that's going to support me. They're not going to invest in me. I want to get better, but my leader, he or she is so focused on hitting the number, doing this, doing that, and I am scared to ask for help because I'm scared that I'm going to lose my job. And so that lack of self confidence that our salespeople have, it is due again to the environment that we create. And if they don't feel like they can ask questions, if they don't feel like they are supported, then they're never going to grow. They're going to stay exactly where they are. And we're going to keep having this Pareto's principle of 20% of the sales force generates 80% of the revenue because we're focusing on those top players. We're not focusing on everyone.
Oh, I just love that approach because I wrote it down, and for me, that's what makes a good leader, like, being approachable and showing them I don't have all the answers. So if you have a sales rep, just the way you described them there, that they're not getting the support, they're feeling perhaps, lacking confidence to ask for it, like, what are some steps, or what would you tell them to turn things around, to start getting the support, to have the belief and the courage to turn around and ask for it? What are some things they can be doing?
So many times, a lack of confidence has something to do with work, but it's more a personal challenge. So, if you lack the confidence to ask for something at work, or you lack the confidence to speak up for yourself, that means that in many areas of your life, this is probably the phenomenon that's happening. You're probably not asking your spouse for help, you're not asking your kids or whoever is in your support system to
Mhm.
help you. So, the first thing that I like to tell people is you have to practice. And you have to practice in a safe place. So, if you have a spouse, if you have a sibling, if you have a trusted friend, you literally call them up, meet up with them, and say, Hey, I'm working on myself. And one of the things that I know I'm not good at is asking for help.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be practicing this with you over the next couple weeks or months or however long you need. And so you have to build that confidence to just ask, because it's actually really hard to ask for help if you've never experienced doing that in life before, which a lot of people haven't. And you just find small opportunities to ask, Hey, I'm hanging up this picture, and typically I would call a handyman. Can you help me do this?
Mhm.
Hey, my car isn't running the right way. And usually I would just call AAA, but I was wondering if you could come look at it for me. So you start asking for help in your personal life, and you realize that most people are not going to just say, No, I don't have time for you. No, you can't. I can't do that. Right. They're going to say, Oh, I can't come right now, but how about I come in 30 minutes?
Mhm.
Or, Oh, I'm unavailable, or that's not my area of expertise, but Bob knows how to do that. So let me send Bob over to you.
Yeah.
Right. So once you get confident and you practice that in your personal life, then you start with small things again with your leadership team. Um, I don't really know how this functions in the CRM. And so I was wondering if you could take a few minutes to help show me how this works.
Mhm.
Sure, no problem. Or they might say, I can't do it now. Let's schedule a meeting. A red flag for you is if they're like, No, go figure it out yourself. Right? Then you know that you're not in an environment that's cultivating your development.
Mhm.
However, you just continue to ask another person in a different way. And again, the more that you ask and the more you realize it is safe to ask, most people want to help because we're humans and we all want to help each other.
Mhm. And I love the way it spills, like, your personal life spills into your professional. So just getting that patterns and recognizing, getting the reps of asking one, but also getting comfortable with someone saying no. because it's like I always say to my daughter, I'm like, "What's the worst someone can say?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "Does anybody die?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, then just go ask." So I think it's twofold. A, they get comfortable with asking because that's vulnerable for people that think they can do it all. They're having to disarm a little bit and show as they think, weakness, but it's not. It's actually strength. And then also being okay with the no, because when your boss or your manager might say not right now, you've heard it so many times before that you're like, it's not a big deal. It's just it's coming. And then again from your customer, the NRNs, it's not a no. It's we've pushed it to Q2. Okay, I've heard this before. I understand. So there's patterns there.
Literally, and literally the pattern is you start with people who are safe, people that you know love you,
Hmm.
people that you know want the best for you. Then you start internally with your manager who again wants the best for your success. And then when you get out there into the big bad world,
Yeah.
customers don't actually care that much about you and they tell you no
Yeah.
or not right now, you have enough confidence built up and you're like, that's fine. I'll just go find five other people like you.
Yeah.
Oh, you won't give it to me. That's okay. I'm good. Right. And so that's how we have to. And the thing is, we need the building blocks. So many people are like, well, I don't deal with rejection well in my personal life. I'm just going to block that out because what happens at home happens at home. I'm a lone wolf. I don't need any support internally. I'm just going to go out here and I'm just going to start dialing. I'm just going to start doing. And what happens is that rejection, it will break you down. That rejection will hit that fragile confidence that you've been keeping so tightly wound up in a ball for your entire life. And what's going to happen is you're going to break. You're going
Hmm.
to get to a point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I don't even enjoy this. I'm at my final wit's end because I don't like doing this anymore. And it's because you don't have the support mechanism in place to help catch you when you're falling.
I love that. And it will break you. What are your thoughts, Wesleyne, on that not having the support system, but also not fully knowing your purpose and the reason why you're doing this? Like, where is the attachment there where you become just doing a job to something that's more meaningful and fulfilling?
That's so good. Whenever I do a speech or I start a sales training, I always start with my why.
Hmm.
And I start with my why because it is, again, I am the change that I want to see. And I want everyone to hold on and have their why at the center of them. Because if we just show up to work to say, I want to make more money, then what happens when you don't make more money? I just want to get more promotions and climb the ladder. What happens when you don't get it? So understanding what is your ultimate purpose. And for some people, they're like, that's a hard question. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just doing this because I was told to go to school, go to college, get a job, keep working, keep moving, keep going, getting up the ladder. And so you've been in go, go, go mode for so long that you don't even know what your purpose or your why is. But again, this kind of goes back to the writing, this journaling. It's a thing that I hold near and dear to my heart.
Hmm.
It's so important. You just start writing down the things that matter to you in life, right? And the thing, it could be something like, I've rescued dogs for the past 10 years. And because I bring in this variable compensation, I can make sure that all five dogs that I have are taken care of. They can get the proper vet care they need and I can get them adopted out, right?
Mm.
Or I get talking about your parents, the legacy you want to build, your children, your community. I really love volunteering, and that's what I do in my free time. And because of this job, I can donate to causes that matter to me so that other people can experience whatever the thing is. But just literally just take a moment and think about the things in life that bring you joy. There has to be something, and it could be something really small. It doesn't have to be something big, but that really small thing that's bringing you joy, you don't realize how much bigger it can be when you start focusing on it and making it your North Star.
I love that. And when you think about the difference between someone who has an awareness of their meaning and their purpose, and even if it's small, the way in which they're engaging with their prospects, the conversations, the questions, they're coming from a different source. They're coming from this real, meaningful, thought provoking conversation versus someone who doesn't. You can tell they're pitchy, their sales either like, what about this? They're like a dog barking, and you're just like the other way. It's curiosity, it's non threatening because it's coming from this source of like, I know that you have a problem that I can help you with. I've helped many before, but then it's layered with, and when I do that, I can help 5 dogs. Like it's a
Mhm.
beautiful picture versus I just want to close this. I want to ring the gong and I want to make the money. And you can see how those two different pictures are going to create different experiences for your prospects.
Absolutely, because people, they remember how you make them feel.
Mm,
Like if you just show up in front of a prospect and you connect with them at an emotional level because you have tapped into your emotional
yes.
levels,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That is what drives things forward. That is when people will continue to have meetings with you, bring the right people to the table. I don't money. Oh, I don't have budget. That's fine. We didn't spend that much in that pot. I'll get all the money I need so I can make sure that I choose you, even though you're the highest
I know.
person, right? It is that emotional connection that we so often forget is important in sales. And people are like, oh, that's warm fuzzy. And we don't want, I actually had somebody who I worked with previously, and she said one of the divisions that she supports, the division vice president said, we don't want any of that warm fuzzy stuff in here. We just got to hit these numbers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you not realize the reason you're not hitting your numbers is because you're a dictator and your people feel so disconnected from you? So when they're in front of their customers, they're just thinking about their quota. They're thinking about the job that they may lose if they don't hit their number, and they can't just breathe and
Mm.
relax and really, really get to that emotional connectedness.
And just to build off that, we're all energy. So I feel when you're vibrating on a high level, that like begets like, and that's when you're attracting that similar energy. But when you're coming from that dictatorship, you're low vibrational, and that's what you're giving off. So it's going to be unless you want more people like that, and that fear and that scarcity, like 1992. You know, you're gonna attract that if you want it. But if you're trying to attract those who are value based and believe and want a true partnership, you're never gonna get it. And just like you said, when I hear budget, it's never about like it's never about budget. I will find the money if there's a connection and compelling reason, and I genuinely feel because I'm Maya Angelou and I know the whole. Remember, people remember the way you feel. I will find the money.
I love to say that, organization in B2B sales, which most people are probably in B2B sales if they're listening to this podcast, a budget is the best laid plan for failure for the year, right? You don't know if you're going to need to pay that much in taxes. You don't know if the building that you have X number of dollars allocated for is actually going to have that many failures. You don't know how much the capital equipment that you are allocating is actually going to cost. You're just guessing, like you
Hmm.
actually don't know, right? And so
Hmm.
the thing is, there is wiggle room
Yep.
where, a couple months into the year, they're like, wow, we have 20% more money in this little fund than we thought we would. So we can allocate that somewhere else. And
Totally.
people are not going to fight to get the extra money if they don't think that it's worth it. If you
Hmm.
haven't demonstrated to them how you're going to help them solve their problems, how you're going to help them be elevated to their boss, how you're going to help them have a higher return on their investment, whatever the thing is that you need to help them understand, they're never going to fight for you internally if you haven't convinced them that you're worth it or that your
Totally.
product is worth it, right?
Hmm. Well, even that, what you said earlier, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. If you can de-risk it, they're going to say, okay, this is it. But like if you have a large opportunity and you're asking them to pull budget from different buckets and you're showing them kind of already what they can expect before the deal closes and they're not happening, they're not happy, they're not pulling any budget. Like you have to show them and give them a taste and help them see around the corner of what it's going to look like working with us. And that's where I see people not putting their best foot forward and they're kind of lazy. And I'm like, you're inviting them to say, you're making it so easy to say no. Because if you're this sloppy and they haven't signed, what's going to happen when they do sign?
When I tell you this morning, I was looking through some things and I found this picture that my brother sent to me. So he worked at a company that I sold instruments to when I was in sales. It was way before he got there, and literally it was dated July 2014. So I was fresh off maternity leave, and I remember this client. They were like, I'm having all this trouble with my instruments. I really need help." And so I listed, I was like, do this, try this, do this, like literally. And they kept it. My brother was like, why is there a stack of emails with your name on it next to this instrument? Because every single time they had a challenge, I would help them. And every
Mm,
single time they need to buy a new instrument, they didn't even go to my competitors. They said, this is what we need. Send us a quote. I would have the PO in a few weeks. And you get that. You do that by not just showing up and selling, but by serving, by helping people understand the challenges that they need to overcome. And sometimes you're outside of your sphere a little bit. I wasn't the technical service person, but I knew how to use these instruments, right? So I knew
Mhm.
I could help. And so when we get out of our head and we realize that the world does not revolve around us, it's not all about what we need, what we want at that moment. That is what helps us truly build pipeline, blow our quotas out the water, extract
Mhm.
more money from every single deal that we are walking with.
Yeah, and it is a transition, when you say serving versus selling. I mean, I think those you have to get around the mindset first, but when you can start doing it, everything opens up for you. The conversations, the yeses, the non-salesiness, but also that there's that feeling of reciprocity and giving and being in service. And for me doing this for as long as I have, like if I don't have that feeling, like I wouldn't be doing it anymore because it's like after 25 years you need to hang it up, but that's what keeps me going.
Absolutely. It's that, the people who are like, wow, I didn't know this was possible.
Mm,
Wow. This is so much faster. This is so much more efficient. I saved a full-time person has been able to be reallocated to another project to do something else because your solution helped us. And again, those are the things that we have to be able to connect with the person that we're speaking to, because those are the things that we use against them to handle
totally.
objections, right?
Yeah.
So when they're like, but why is this so expensive? You're like, but we talked about it and you're going to save $100,000 a year on a person's salary. And this option is only 10% of that. So I don't understand. Like, help me
Yeah.
understand. And when you put it to them in their words,
Mhm.
then it does something in their brain. And knowing how to use their words is contingent on listening to them and making
Mm.
sure they have enough time to talk and express all of the things that are on their mind and their challenges.
Mhm. And a lot of good there, Wesley. And when you went back to earlier when we started about the role playing activity with asking open ended questions, part of it is also putting your pen down and listening or asking to listen, like seek to understand, because most people have the answer that they're waiting for in their head and they're missing all these nuggets. And they're also not pausing and just holding space because you might have asked such an amazing question that they need a minute to just process it and think about it. And then everyone hates silence and you jump in it and you're trying to answer it. So, just like you said, giving them space to process what you just said and give you actually an answer that's going to help you.
Yes, absolutely. Allow people, because we all need a little time to think,
Mhm.
right? And we are so ready to fill the space with words, with talking. And what you will often find is when there is silence, your prospect will be like, oh, I probably need to say more. I probably didn't say enough. And they'll just keep talking and they just keep
Yeah.
going and they just keep going. And then when you do, and so the questioning that I teach is mostly open-ended questions, but there are times for closed-ended questions. And it's after your prospect has given you a lot of information and you say,
Mhm.
so I want to make sure I understand you correctly. And you reflect back to them what they have actually said to you. And you say, did I
Mhm.
get that right? And they're like, yes. And then and this and this and
Yeah.
this, like they're so excited to hear their words, right? Because that shows them that you care about what they said. You're not just
Mhm.
there to sell a solution, a product, an item. You are there to help them solve their challenges.
Mhm. And I just think about that and think about the emotions they go through. They're frustrated because maybe they don't know the problem, they don't know the complexity of it. And as they hear someone summarize it in their own language, it starts taking shape. And in their mind, they're thinking, I'm on the journey to solution here, which means freedom to me. But so often sales reps don't do that. And I think that summary is so important. So, what I heard, and when you break that apart, is like, I hear you. I'm validating your thoughts. I'm holding space for you. Everybody wants to hear that using their language. Like that in itself is a huge win.
Absolutely. People want to hear their words. And so
Mhm.
when I going back to earlier in the conversation, when I said the way that I learned to sell was I went and talked to people, understood how they were using their instruments, what they were doing, and then I went to their competitors or their colleagues, whoever, and I would ask them the same questions. And then I learned the language. And so I
Mhm.
say, I was a chemist, but I spoke engineer because all of my
Mm.
clients were engineers. And so I needed
Mhm.
to understand the language of my customers. And so if
Yep.
we don't speak the language of our customers, again, we are missing a huge mark because they don't actually care what sales speak is. They don't care what engineer speak is or advertising speak is or whatever your background is or whatever the product that you're selling is. They care about their issues and their challenges. And so when we step fully into that prospect, that customer's world, what we're doing is we're showing them that it's not just about me meeting my quota or getting you to cut me a PO or place an order. It's about me helping you solve the challenges, the issues, the problems that are right in front of you today.
Yeah, and I think when you don't, you're an outsider looking in. And most of my clients have not done the job of their prospects. And that's okay, but I say go learn the language because when you're shooting off this internal jargon and all your acronyms, they're not going to put their hand up and say, "What is your AT3 6000?" I'm not really sure. They don't care what that is. Like, learn their language. If it's mortgages, if it's construction, if it's air traffic control, like learn it. And then all of a sudden, there's this sense of you get me. Therefore, you must be able to help me.
Yes. And one of the key things with organizations when we're helping them with their onboarding plan is I need the salespeople to get out of the sales department.
Hmm.
So I make them go work in the
Mm.
warehouse. I make them go sit with customer success or customer service or whatever it is, because they need to understand the problems that their existing customers are having. They need to understand how these products are being made. They need to understand. So if they're selling something or something is happening, they're like, I need this quick, fast, in a hurry. You're like, I understand that. But let me tell you what happens in
Mm.
our warehouse and how we ensure your quality control. And this is why it's going to take this amount of time, right? Because even though they may have not sat in that customer seat, they have sat in the seat within their organization that is not just in
Mhm.
sales. They have sat with finance. They understand what it takes to get terms. Like, Mr. Customer, I know you want $100,000 credit line.
Yeah.
However, right? So when we have this broad overview of what it takes to equip a
Mhm.
salesperson, it's more than the sales skills and product knowledge. They got to get their hands dirty. They got to get out there, feel it, touch it,
Mhm.
taste it, so they can truly be able to empathize with their clients when they're in front of them.
Mhm. And for me, that's a partner versus a vendor.
Mm, that's good.
And I remember on your podcast, I shared when I started in customer service, I did all that. And in the moment, I'm like, why do I have to go to the warehouse? Why do I have to see this molding and how things are glued together? I don't care. I just want to get in sales. And then in sales, when there was back orders or delays, I'm like, but you don't understand this extrusion process takes 2 weeks. And the reason it does, and they accepted it because there was education behind it and the quality. And, that we weren't going to compromise on quality, but I had that information that they were so willing to accept it. And so you become more valuable than versus this pie, and all you have is a sales slice. You want to be a business partner and understand all the slices of the pie.
Absolutely. A trusted partner, someone
Yeah.
who truly understands, like, okay, I understand this challenge that you're having. Well, can you come down on price? I mean, can't you just go down 2 or 3%? Your competitors are at this place. Well, let me help you understand why we're a little bit higher.
Mhm.
Let me tell
Mhm.
you all the back end support. Let me tell you the engineering that goes into to making this, to doing this, like really helping them understand the why, right? You
Mhm.
asked me
Mhm.
that why. Like, what is the reason why? If you help people understand that why, that gets them to a deep level of emotional connection with you. And it eventually they're like, aha, okay, I got it.
Mhm. And I love that, and that's a great way to we're ending it, but, on that note, but it all starts with understanding your own why, because then there's that alignment, like, why talks to why.
Yes, yes, kind of like you were saying, like attracts like, right?
Yep.
So if you are in this realm in the universe and you're like, okay, I know my purpose, I know my why, I am here to serve, I am not here to sell, and you sit in front of a prospect and they're like, okay, so the prospect knows their why, you know your why, but your job is to extract that prospect's why so you understand it. So you are
Mhm.
armed with that knowledge of their reason why they are trying to solve the problem that they're
Mhm.
having, because
Mhm.
people buy because they're having a problem. If there's no
Mhm.
problem, there's no sale. So we have to really understand what the underlying why and problem is.
Mhm. Or otherwise, you're attacking their belief system.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
they're gonna hang tighter to what they're doing.
Exactly, because change is hard. And
It is
so
hard.
it's hard. Whatever solution I'm using or doing doesn't really serve me well, but I know it. It's familiar, and you're not convincing me that I should let it
Mhm.
go.
Mhm. Mhm. So if there's sales reps listening now, Wesleyne, and they're shaking their head going, "Man, I thought I had it all figured out and now I'm back to the drawing board." What would you say 3 things, 2 or 3 things they can start doing to just really kind of slow down and start really getting aware of the way in which they're showing up, their language, just their kind of current state in order to see where they should be going? Because some people are just like, "I want this." It's like, well, just slow down for a minute and what can they be doing to look inward to kind of get an assessment of what's working well to determine where they should be going?
So I would say the first thing is to sit down and really tap into the reason why you are working so hard, right? And I really say that it's important for us to have our goals. We all have a revenue goal because that's a number we have to hit. But a goal that so many people don't think about is the variable compensation, the extra money that you're making this month, this year, this quarter. What is that money going to do for you? Is it paying off debt? Is it going on vacation? Is it saving? Is it whatever the thing is? Know what your North Star is in terms of monetary. Practice. Find an accountability partner. Find another rep on your team or outside of your team. Maybe it's somebody in a completely different region, and have once a month or twice a month a time where you guys actually practice your skills. I like to say practice at home. Don't practice with prospects, and allow that person to give you feedback like, okay, well, when you were asking me questions, I kind of felt like you were badgering me a little bit. Oh yeah, I didn't like that so much. And if you are able to have a three-way accountability, because you'll one person the salesperson, one person is a customer, and the other person is the observer, and the observer will give all the feedback, and you guys go around and around. This will not only teach you what skills you are using, what things you are doing well, it will also teach you how to give constructive feedback to your people. And the last one is really tap into your emotions in terms of what activities, what things are draining, and what things light you up. How you feel when you're out in the field in front of customers versus when you're in the office having to make cold calls, right? Like, so really understand what makes you tick and what makes you kind of deflate.
I love those. All great and very tactical. So, anyone listening, you can apply those things and really get an awareness of where you're at, because only then can you determine where you need to go. Wesley, if there's folks that are interested in connecting with you, learning more about your programs, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I would say two ways. The first way is connect with me on LinkedIn. I am very active on there. Another one is askwesleyan.com. And on there, you can ask me questions about anything, sales mindset, how to prospect better, whatever. And you'll get live questions from me. So those are the two best ways.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom. It's always great to chat with you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.